is going up as well. You know, so if people are producing pure water now that is gone from 5 naira to 10 naira,
and in some cases 20 naira,
it means that materials to perhaps produce the pure water has gone up.
Yes.
And maybe too in those kinds of companies, the wages for those workers too should also see some increment. It won't be static. Now, if that is the case, let us look at the case of government. Why is it that government earnings doesn't look like it's been going up, in spite of all that?
I do not agree with you that government earnings has not been going up.
Why should
last
government
year we know what the oil revenue was. Today, this year we've gone from just barely $30 per barrel. Today we are talking about $40 per barrel. When you punch your calculators, you will realize that even at $40 per barrel, Nigeria has enough resources to cater for the needs of its workers, especially in the light of the affluent ways of life of the politicians. The National Assembly has to throw in some money onto the table. They ought to throw in at least 50% of what they are spending today onto the table.
Do we know what it is they're spending?
Today, I think their budget is 120 billion. 60 billion can conveniently cater for the entire National Assembly, where things are properly done.
In your calculations?
Yes. In fact, 60 billion is too much. If you go to Norway, sometimes a person gets into the legislature in Norway richer than when he comes out. Perhaps his businesses may have gone down somewhat. In some cases, he may be better off because of his business, not because of his earnings as a legislator. And Norway is one of the best societies today in Nigeria, in the Scandinavian. In the world, in the Scandinavian.
So do you think that, what methods then do you think we should be adopting?
I think that the reward structure should be rejigged. It's a simple policy. It's a simple principle.
Do you also agree that, because I think my colleague, Sulaiman, was talking about the framing of the conversation.
Yes.
And we always frame it around minimum wage. It's not around salary reviews. But if you look at what Labour is saying, it's essentially a general salary review, which is framed around the minimum wage conversation.
Yes, you are correct. You see, there's a presumption that when you're talking about minimum wage, and let me get this out of the way, I am in support of increase in minimum wage, but I may not be in support of 56,000 naira. They can meet somewhere. Now, you see, when there's a presumption when you talk about minimum wage, that you are talking about across the board review. So, for example,
is that a presumption? Does that always work?
It should work that way. That is the ought proposition in that situation. That is the ought proposition. If you get an is proposition that is contrary to that, then it's a different proposition entirely. The ought proposition in that situation is that as you are increasing minimum wage, you should run across. You should ride across the salary structures. And it doesn't mean that those who are earning so high, those who are in the top, should have commensurate increase as happens down with
I'm just looking. Let's take for instance.
Yes.
I think the last time minimum wage was increased from about 7,500 to
5,500.
No, 7,500 to about 18,000 naira,
yes.
which is over 100%.
Yes.
It's close to 150%, almost, as it were. Now, if you look at that kind of increment for the minimum worker, what kind of percentage would you say we will be applying across board for at least the worker at the top level?
That's why I spoke about commensurate increase, commensurate reflection of increases. So, for example, according to the principle of reappropriation, as it were, of income, to such an extent as that you use tax principles. The more you earn, the more you pay. The less you earn, the less you pay. To reflect in the situation, you find that if, for example, you increase at the lowest level by 50%, perhaps at the next level, you can go with 49.
At the lowest level, now we're looking at reality. What
no, I'm
happened
using this is an analogy.
Yes.
Yes.
So if you increase by, say, 150% at the lowest level.
At the lowest level. Perhaps by the time you get to the top level, you may be getting about 100% increase or 60, 70% increase. You know, the essence is to redistribute income and ensure that there's not a wide gap between those at the low level and those at the high level.
What then do you think happens to government wage bill, for instance?
How do you mean what happens?
Should we be worried about what, you know, the size of government wage bill at the end of the day?
The problem of the government's wage bill is not necessarily the fact that they are paying too much. Sometimes people are stealing government money in terms of ghost workers, in terms of paying people who ought not to be paid, and also in terms of paying politicians.
Okay, let me bring in this perspective, because if we talk about this increment across board on a regular basis, I think they say 5 years.
5-year period.
What then happens to productivity? Because many will say, well, whether I'm productive or not, as long as I'm in this service, in 5 years, I get a minimum wage increase, and that reflects on my overall output. Aren't we doing ourselves some sort of injustice?
That is the challenge of government. That is the challenge of governance. It is not the problem of the employee to institute policies to ensure increase in productivity. It is the problem of the policy makers and also the employer. What the employee does is to render his services or her services. So the employer, knowing that these situations must arise, must ensure that they are always thinking out of the box to increase and improve on productivity, including the government. Today, we are still within that central location of going to Abuja to collect money. We are all going cap in hand to Abuja to collect money. Nobody, no state government, no, even the federal government is not thinking out of the box. Rhetorics rule over everywhere. People talk about diversifying the economy. Since my secondary school days, I have been hearing we have to diversify our economy. And today we are still diversifying our economy. And we still remain where we are.
You think the oil economy is not letting us think the way we ought to?
I think it is, you see, I think it is not necessarily the oil economy. I've used the example of Norway, for example. Norway has a lot of oil, and yet they are managing themselves very well. It is not about oil economy. It is about the structure of the country.
All right. We have to thank you for coming on this morning, Ikechukwu, giving his perspective about the minimum wage. Well, that's the show today as well. We thank you all for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
Or you can bet that this conversation will definitely continue because the heat is on. Thank you for watching today. I'm Maokwe Ogun.
Many thanks. I'm Sulaiman. I'll let us see you again.